Pittsburgh. Very nice.
I rolled into the city gung-ho to explore its off-limit sites and get their real stories.
I'm one way here. The coffee's empty. I'm lost. Oh, no, darn it. Oh, this is all going to hell. Oh, another one way. What?
I had no idea it would be so complicated, but that's what happens in a town that's constantly changing. Pittsburgh. In the 21st century, it's become a regular on those lists of top 10 places to live. It's clean, cultured, successful, and surprisingly scenic. But this city was almost destroyed by its own success, then got a second chance and made the most of it. I came to see just how they did it. Not so long ago, this view would have been profoundly different. Back in the industrial heyday, the air was so laden with soot that it could turn day into night. But even though someone once called it hell with the lid off, the steel that was made in that town changed the face of America forever. Pittsburgh is Steel City. It built the girders and railroad tracks that built modern America, and millions flocked here to work in the colossal factories. By 1910, the banks of the city's 3 rivers were packed with almost 200 mills, foundries, and support plants, churning out half the steel in America. Now the factories are gone, and the rivers of steel have dried up. But I'm heading to a site where you can still catch a glimpse of Pittsburgh's fiery past, the Cary Blast Furnace. Pittsburgh was the steel-making capital of the world for almost a century, with this landscape dominated by steel mills and giant blast furnaces, just like this one back here, these behemoth factories. This place has been shut down for over 30 years, but I'm getting special access from historian Ron Baroff. Hey, Ron.
Good, how are you?
Ron's family has worked in and around the mills for generations, when Pittsburgh was basically a company town ruled by steel.
We're looking at a lot of open, nice meadow space around here. This was a world of steel down here originally.
Yes.
This was just filled with furnaces.
7.
7, okay. And over the last 20, 30 years, they've taken these buildings away, and
Yes.
we're left with this one here.
Yes.
Today, the abandoned Cary Furnace has landmark status, just like the Washington Monument. It's equally impressive, but a lot deadlier.
Unbelievable. You gotta back up just to get a look at the thing.
This is that sweeping view before you get inside.
And this would have been spewing out dark, dark smoke.
Yep.
Huge stacks of raw material out here.
Heaped up over that wall.
This furnace was just one part of an enormous steel-making complex. While armor plating and I-beams were stamped out at the Homestead Steelworks, just across the river, the Cary furnaces supplied the steady stream of molten iron, the key ingredient in steel. Iron ore came from the Mesabi Range in Minnesota, and one of the richest coal deposits in the world, the Pittsburgh Seam, provided the fuel. It was all owned, controlled, or manipulated by a Scottish immigrant named Andrew Carnegie. He worked his way up from the slums of Pittsburgh to tycoon by pouncing on the next big thing. And in the late 1800s, that meant steel.
He purchases this site in 1898.
How important was this to his entire operation, Carnegie?
Oh, it's huge. It allowed the Homestead Works to go from a pretty important mill to the most dominant steel mill anywhere.
In the world.
In the world.
Fueled by 6,000 tons of iron per day from the Cary furnaces, Homestead Steel helped erect some of the 20th century's most iconic structures: the Empire State Building, the St. Louis Arch, the locks of the Panama Canal. And they wouldn't be here without the tech inside this building.
So we're going in here?
Absolutely.
What a massive piece of metal.
Yeah.
I've had my tetanus booster, so Ron's gonna guide me through the 50,000 square foot complex to see what it took to make thousands of tons of molten iron a day. And it all started with train cars full of ore.
And literally a machine picks that train car up.
It's uncoupled, it comes in, hooks it in, rotates it up, and dumps it out.
Incredible. Okay, so this is all the iron ore. All of this is basically just going straight down this copper.
Imagine how loud that would be.
Yeah, exactly, with all that stuff coming down.
Right.
The noise was literally deafening. Then there was the heat, topping 400 degrees in parts of the plant, and deadly pockets of carbon monoxide gas. All of it running 24/7 to keep up with demand. Turning mountains of raw ore into molten iron was more complicated than just popping it into an oven. It had to be mixed with a refined coal called coke and limestone to strip away impurities. That happened in the stockhouse, and it was the only place here that wasn't hot as hell.
It was wet, and it was cold.
Yeah.
There were rats down here.
Yeah.
Most of the guys that worked here never wanted to come down here.
Despite the conditions, someone had to keep a very close eye on the iron mixture. That lucky guy was called a Larryman.
He knows what he needs. He knows the mixture. How many parts coke to iron ore to limestone.
Okay.
The mixture, called burden, was poured into cars that lifted 1,500 pounds per load up to the top of the 9-story blast furnace.
So all day long, these things are just going up and down with the
got it.
very fuel that this furnace needs.
That's exactly what's happening.
The burden was dumped in the top of the furnace, and as it fell, was hit by superheated 1,200-degree air. It instantly ignited, melted, and began to pool up in the base of the furnace.
Oh, this is the bottom of the furnace.
You got it. This is the cast house.
It's like the biggest movie set ever built.
This is where it all comes together in one place.
So all of this metal is pooling up at the bottom. What happens then?
What happens then is it's time to take it out of the furnace.
A siren would sound, and all extraneous personnel cleared the floor in a hurry.
This hole is basically drilled out every 4 to 6 hours.
Yes.
And I guess the iron's going to come bubbling out of that thing.
Yeah, it's going to come flying out of that thing.
All right.
Yes, that's a controlled volcano at this point. You're releasing the beast, all right?
A man with a hand drill bored through this clay plug, unleashing 250 tons of molten iron.
Would have filled this trough up. A ribbon of that bright orange molten metal, out of like lava, would basically be spewing down here, rolling down towards the trough.
There were multiple channels, each leading to a special transport car. As the metal flowed along, final impurities, called slag, were skimmed off the top.
And what, you had 3 or 4 guys running this operation up here?
So you have first and second helpers wearing asbestos seat suits.
Yep.
And this is from the 20s, 30s on.
Yeah.
Prior to that, they didn't wear these.
No kidding.
The 3,000-degree cargo was poured into torpedo-shaped railroad cars and shunted out of the plant and over a bridge to Carnegie's nearby steel mill. At its peak, the furnace was running 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And what made all that molten iron possible was a red-hot man-made wind generated by a technological breakthrough, the hot stoves.
So this is one of the 6 stoves, right?
Yes.
And what is inside the stove is a brick interior.
Right. You've got gas jets coming in and heating up those bricks until they're glowing white hot.
When the air in this inferno reached 1,200 degrees, it was forced into the furnaces, melting rock and iron like ice cubes.
Before these type of stoves come in, there was difficulty in getting the temperature up high enough to truly melt the iron.
This forced air tech took iron ore to a whole other level.
You're getting a pure molten iron, which then in turn creates a much higher grade of steel.
So this is the reason we start building buildings in New York the size no one ever dreamed.
Right.
Skyscrapers and all that, because the structural steel is now strong enough that you can start building things that mankind could never imagine.
Exactly.
The newer, highly refined steel didn't just build skyscrapers. In World War II, these furnaces helped America take down Hitler.
I mean, the iron that was coming out of here and going across the river into Homestead became that armor plate.
Yeah.
That was going into tanks, and it was going into the battleships. I mean, it is not hyperbole to say that, you know, this mill won the war.
This furnace helped forge an empire that produced more metal than all of Great Britain. And when Carnegie sold it in 1901, he collected $500 million.
You can take a technology that has been practiced for centuries, perhaps thousands of years in one form or another, making metal, and then rethinking it on a scale unimaginable before now. I mean, it's just awe-inspiring, the vision involved in this. It just goes on and on and on, higher and higher.
Carnegie Steel grew into U.S. Steel. With 213 mills and nearly 1,000 miles of railroad, it was one of the biggest companies in the world. Then, in the late 1970s, steel production went overseas.
Imagine, this is just 2 of the blast furnaces. There were 7 of them in this facility, okay, right here. And there were dozens of them around the Pittsburgh area. Now you have just 1 working steel mill right up there. So they're still doing it in Pittsburgh, just, you know, a shadow of its former self in terms of steel.
Even though steel is gone, Pittsburgh is still here, because what really built this city was toughness, innovation, and ambition.